Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Full Potential Live Show with Nick Wagner Sr. And I realize that we are up against the Oscars tonight from a viewing perspective. We skipped last week because of the Super Bowl. I didn't think anyone was going to watch the Super Bowl last week, so I took a week off. But, I thought, Frank, I thought maybe the people watching this would be different from those watching the Oscars tonight. So I thought we'd move forward. So I am thrilled to be I'm going to go ahead and call you a LinkedIn legend at this point, Frank, even though your LinkedIn career hasn't been that long. I think a lot of people know you. So this is Frank Mengert, who is, many of you know from LinkedIn. What you might not know is what he does for his day job. Maybe they do, as an entrepreneur, a technology entrepreneur, along with benefits as well. So Frank, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, man. I'm excited for this.
Well, I really appreciate you making time. I know you're super busy. So first, thank you. I like to let my guests introduce themselves. So if we're going to go meet someone for the first time and introduce Frank. So say you went to a conference or something, what would be your 2-minute Frank intro?
That's a good one because so I like that because I'm always not about who I am, what I do for a living. I'm about who I am as Frank as a person. And I like to sometimes throw this at people and say that every day I wake up inspired to be a better version of myself. And I do that by 3 principles, which is learn, create, and share. And I try to do that every day. I try to build that into my life, and I'm trying to be a better version of myself. So I do that a lot because I like to learn from people that I meet. So that kind of puts things in a different perspective, especially in a networking environment, because I like to listen. I like to learn about other people, their experiences, and of course, share with what I have as well. So that is what I would probably do if we were at a networking event. But for the purpose of this show, I run a national employee benefits technology firm located in New Haven, Connecticut. We have an office in Chicago as well, and we work with insurance brokers and insurance carriers. And our end user is our HR firms, so they use our product to deliver their employee benefits. So think medical, dental, vision, all those things that they offer to their employees as a platform for them to enroll on. And they can automate a lot of things that they would do manually, and of course a lot of areas around compliance. And essentially, we're putting time back into HR professionals' days.
Very, very interesting. So, we will dive much deeper into what that is, and how you ended up in that business. And it's, I think you've been doing it now since, I believe it was 2011, according to your LinkedIn. So it's been a little while. So we'll dive into that. But I love what you started with and how you describe yourself, because I think, and you'll agree with this, I think a lot of people what they do for work defines them rather than who they are, right? So I love how you introduce yourself as a little bit differently. I enjoy that. So why don't we, before we go into your life as an entrepreneur and your life on LinkedIn and your tens of thousands of followers and your, I want to say almost daily videos. I believe they're daily at this point. Maybe you have a couple days where you don't post the videos, but there's a lot of videos. Mm-hmm. Let's start with, let's go back in time and back to when you were little Frank. Did you always dream of being an entrepreneur? Because I love to hear that story from people, because it's always an interesting journey. So is that what you wanted to do when you were a little kid?
No, I don't think I didn't think I know what an entrepreneur really was back then. I will tell you that when I look back at my life, I had entrepreneurial DNA. I had tidbits of entrepreneurship in me. I just didn't know that that's what that was. Mm-hmm. But I think it was inside of me. So when I was younger, I wanted to be a doctor. My mother wanted me to be a preacher, or a pastor. So those were kind of my aspirations back then. I think if you would have asked me when I was young Frankie baby, I would have said I wanted to be a doctor.
Interesting. Okay. And did you have, so you ended up being an entrepreneur. Were there entrepreneurs in your life growing up that maybe you met or you looked up to? Like, was there a family member that was an entrepreneur or a family friend?
My godfather was pretty successful. He was a professional kickboxer.
Oh, wow.
He was like worldwide kickboxer, very well known, had a successful career, and made a lot of money and parlayed that career into entrepreneurship. So he was someone I looked up to because of the fact that he had nice stuff, but he also he was always building something new. He owned a string of car washes, and he's done all these different things, but he's been very successful. And he was always someone as a kid that I looked up to.
Yeah, it's just I think it's interesting because I think there's, especially as a kid, you know, we're so easily influenced as kids, right? That we see things and we don't maybe realize it, but we take note of things, right? So maybe you noted, oh wow, look how successful so and so is because he's an entrepreneur, right? So maybe that played into it. So you wanted to be a doctor. What was first job you got paid for? Like not necessarily out of college, but first job you got paid for, maybe middle school, high school. Like what were, I'm sure you were hustling back then too. What were you doing as young Frank to make money?
Well, so the first job I got paid for that wasn't a legitimate taxes taken out of my paycheck was probably part of that, what I was referring to as things I did as an entrepreneurial mind that I had. As a kid, I grew up in South Florida, and I noticed that a lot of people's lawns were very long and people didn't cut them. So I would take we owned a push lawnmower, and I would take our lawnmower and I would push it around the neighborhood. And I would knock on people's doors and say, hey, your lawn's really long, I'll cut it. And the funny thing is I was probably maybe around 8, 9 years old, and
Wow.
I couldn't start the lawnmower. So it was a pull start, and I couldn't start it. So the person whose door I knocked on would have to start the lawnmower for me so I could push it for them. But I did that, and I used to push my lawnmower all around, weed whacking, everything. I would do everything as a young kid, and I would make probably 10, 15 bucks. So that was probably the first time I remember getting paid to do something. And then when I got a little younger, part of, again, just referring to the entrepreneurial piece, I used to sell candy in middle school. I would go to the supermarkets down in Florida where it's called Publix. I would go to Publix, I would buy candy in bulk, and I would go to school and I would sell it during the day for like a quarter for a blow pop and all this stuff. So I would push candy. So those are the things I remember those as making money back then, and a little hustling. But my first job was I was a bagger at here in East Haven, here in Connecticut, at Pathmark, it was called. So it was a supermarket, and I bagged groceries.
Yeah, no, it's I love asking that question because I think a lot of people, when we talk about people's careers, like I mentioned, they're so diverse, and there's so many different times throughout your career that mold you into who you are today. And it starts really young, right? A lot of people don't think of it, but like it starts really young. So I just love hearing what people did as little kids. So how did you go from, so you grew up in Florida, how did you end up in Connecticut in the New Haven area? I want to hear how that happened. My second question to go along with that is, when you were in high school, when you were doing that job as in the grocery store, was your intention always to go to college? I know you went to college for computer science. Was that like, were your parents like, Frank, you're going to college, or was that something that was negotiable? So the two questions.
Yeah. So I had no choice but to move to Connecticut. My mother, she wanted to move to Connecticut. She wanted to start a new life with her and my father. I have an older brother, and I have a younger brother, a younger sister. So I had no choice. My mom wanted a fresh start. She wanted to leave Florida back in the mid '80s, and we all moved as a family to Connecticut to start a new life. So that coming up here, I had no choice. The second part of your question, no one in my family's ever went to college. So they were not forcing me to go to college. They probably wanted me to my father was a truck driver. And I probably at some point if around high school, if you would have asked me what I was going to be, I probably would have said I was going to be a truck driver. Cause I didn't have, I didn't, in that young, in my mind, I wasn't sure if college was going to be the thing for me or not. I know I wanted to go. I just didn't think I was going to be afforded the opportunity.
So no, I think what your parents' experience with or without college, I think influences a lot of kids' experiences with or without college. And, I find it interesting because there's so many, I think the days of high school is pushing every kid's got to go to a four-year college seems to be changing, which I think is a good thing, because I think there's so many kids that could benefit from the military or a technical college, or there's so many other options besides just a 4-year college. So it's just, I think it's interesting how that's kind of transitioning. So you didn't think you were going to go to college. You ended up going, and you ended up going for one of the hardest possible majors you can go for, computer science. So let's break that down. Was technology and computers always like a thing of yours? Was that you always loved? Because no one just wakes up one day and says, I'm going to be a computer science major, because that's really hard.
Yeah. So, and I don't want to discount myself or play down who Frank is. I am very book smart.
Yeah.
I was always smart in school. I was in talented and gifted programs, and had a very IQ. I was tested very, very young. So I am a bright person. I come from very humble backgrounds and just didn't think that college was in the cards for me. So, school was fun for me. It was actually sometimes kind of boring, but school was really fun for me, and I did enjoy it. When I went, it's a funny story. When I first started to go to school, I thought I was going to be a business major. I figured I'm going to, business, that's a great way to go. I'll land something good. And early, I mean, it was probably not even a few weeks into school, I realized that I needed a computer, and I didn't own one. Family, no one had a computer, and I went on. Back then, it was called Bargain News. So there was a paper, you can open it up and you can search for just about anything. It's like the modern day Craigslist, I guess. So I went on Bargain News and I was looking for computers. And I found a guy who had a bunch of computer parts. Or I don't remember the ad clearly, but several computer items, keyboards, mice, this and that, willing to sell it, in bulk. It was like $350. So I didn't have $350, but I figured I would go up there anyway. And I went up to his house, and I remember, it's just crazy how like life plays out. But I remember pulling up to this beautiful house. There was this big like barn garage that it was open, and this guy had tractors, and this lawn was green, and his house was beautiful with a pool. And I was just like, man, this guy's living the life. And I remember he brought me into this garage. He's like, hey, come on back. I'm pulling this garage. And he's like, oh, he's just making small talk with me, showing me all the computer stuff. And he's like, what are you going to do with all this? And I told him, I said, listen, I started school. I was going to school to be going to school for business, and I need a computer. And to be honest with you, I don't have one, and I really can't afford one. So we were just talking for a little bit, and we're going through all the stuff. And he said to me, I don't want to give this to you. He said, I want you to remember that you got this, and that there was a price to pay for it. This guy was like really impactful on me. Yeah. And he charged me $50 for all this stuff. And I filled my trunk with all this computer stuff, and I brought it home, and I didn't know what to do with it. It was like stuff everywhere. So I started taking it apart, and all these parts and everything, screwdrivers. And I was always a tinker. I call myself a tinker. As a kid, I used to take apart everything, toasters, you name it. I would take it all apart, put it back together. So I was taking all this computer stuff apart, putting it together, and I ended up getting one to work. And it was like the aha moment for me. I said, I don't want to be a business major. I want to do computer science. I switched my major to computer science and loved computers. So just ate it up. On the hardware side, I had to do programming because of my majors, but right. love computers. So that way.
And you had never had a computer before that?
Never. No, we never, in our home, never owned a computer. No.
That is a really impactful story. And it's just interesting because I was a computer science major at UConn my freshman year, my whole freshman year. And I actually went the opposite way. I was like, this is too technical for me. And I actually switched to management information systems, which is like IT and business. It's like kind of a mix. So we went opposite ways. But we were very different because I grew up like building my own computers. Like I was like going to computer shows and buying computer parts, like a total nerd, like from mowing lawns, So that's such a cool story. So you switched to computer science. Like how hard was it picking up all this really technical stuff that you really had never done before?
Man, I'll tell you, I absorbed it. I loved, and that's kind of me. I still have that mentality today. I do stuff, I go all in. Like I just want to, I'll pick it apart. I'll try to learn everything about it and seeing a motherboard with all the components on it and pulling out a CPU, and back then with the old the chips and how they used to be. I mean, it's crazy the way equipment used to be back then and how it is now. When I take a computer apart now, I'm like, whoa, it's like, so it's funny, but it was, I loved it, and I just went all in. And I mean, in school it was fun too. I really enjoyed being around people and learning. I think a lot of people, like you mentioned too earlier, people discount school and people knock college. I think, everyone wants to be an entrepreneur nowadays, and entrepreneurship has been glamorized. But I would tell people to if you have the opportunity to give school a try, I would not just discount school and not go. I think there's a lot of value out of it. Yeah. And I didn't pay $60,000 a year for school, so I'm coming from a different perspective. But you don't need to go to a $60,000 school. I think there's a lot of value in professors and people and what you take away. So it was a lot of fun.
I think you're right. I mean, there's community college. There's a lot of great community colleges, technical colleges. You don't have to go to like an elite 4-year college. I think you make up a great point. It's not just the knowledge you learn in the classroom, but it's also like all those life experiences you get with all the other students, with the professors. There's just so many different experiences there that I think mold people to who they are. So I think that's well said. So you're in college, you get a computer science major, and then you started your first business, it looks like right after school, right? Or did you start it during school? Like, how did that happen? Are you like another Mark Zuckerberg and you were like coding in your dorm room? And like, how did this happen?
I wish. Funny. So again, another funny story. This is great because, I've never told these stories. So, I'm in school and I was working for a company that helped pay for college for me. So I got a real job. So I was working and going to school full time too. So I would work from 11 at night until 7 in the morning. I worked for a company in Guilford called Arkwright. They made photographic paper. Wow. So I would work there overnight on this machine, and it was nothing to do with computers or everything. It was just a job that was paying me decent money, and they were helping pay for school. So I'd go to school I would go to work 11 o'clock, 7 in the morning. I'd get out. I'd go to school from probably 8:30 to around 4 o'clock, and I'd come home, get my homework done, get a little sleep, rinse and repeat, and I do it over and over again. So and they would help pay for school. So I was getting academic scholarships, and then I was getting payment from them too to help pay for the rest, books and all types of other things. So it was a good gig. I learned a lot from the job too. It was a good experience, but it's when I graduated, and about a couple months later, I walked into work one day. And this job, I got my computer science degree. I thought I was going to work in the front office. This was a big company. And I thought I'd work my way up into the front. I'd be the IT guy, be part of their information technology department. Yeah. And I walked in one day, and they were like, "You have to go into it's like a cafe. We had vending machines and tables where you can eat and stuff." So I walk in there, and there's the plant manager, and I remember her name was Noreen Connolly, and she was sitting there and asked me to have a seat, and she said, "We're going to lay you off today." And I was just like completely shocked. And I lost my job. So it was a shocker to me, not only because I thought I knew my job very well. I put in a lot of effort. Like I said, I go all in. So I knew how to coat paper better than anyone. Like I was the guy that ran the ovens and dampers and all this coating and the viscosity of the fluid, stuff that I knew nothing about, but I learned because I wanted to be the best. So I was the best person they had in that department. And I said to her, "How can you let me go? I'm the best you got." And she said, "Because you'll recover." She said, "If I let some of these other guys that have been here 20, 30 years, they won't recover, but you will."
Wow.
And I didn't get it at the time, but it was a super, it was a crazy life experience for me because she was right. But at the time I didn't want to hear it.
It's actually probably one of the greatest compliments you can give someone. But at the time you were probably not happy, of course, but that's interesting.
So I mean, and tied to that, yeah. So I had a side hustle. At the time I was fixing computers for people, just kind of break fix stuff. Hey, I was trying to learn. So people, they would know me as a computer guy. I went to school for computer science. So something would go wrong with their computer, and I was the guy that was fixing it. And I would do more and more and take it on. And that side hustle, when I lost my job, turned into my main hustle out of necessity, because I was like, I can go find another job, or maybe I can pursue this and it can work. So I decided to go the route of trying to be the computer, start the IT side.
And that was the IT solutions consulting company.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
So you started off fixing, just doing like break fix type things, but I mean, you did it for almost 8 years. So I'm assuming it evolved quite a bit. So can you tell us a little bit about, so that was like your first company that you owned, right? Like,
yes.
How big did it get? Did you have employees? Like, what was the evolution of that over 8 years?
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. I had employees. It was a slow start. It didn't happen overnight. It was a lot of work. I remember taking on work. I was signed up and took contracts on, and I was trying to recruit business, trying to get business of companies. I used to walk and go door to door and say, hey, you need an IT person, and I would knock on businesses. So I did a lot of that in the beginning, but over time built the brand, built a customer base up. And really, I was during that time. This was about 2004, 2005 when I was growing the company. Not a lot of people were doing. You couldn't. It wasn't as easy to find skilled IT people, and even if you could, the rate was really high. And back then, I kind of found out, hey, what should our rate be? And our rate was around $125 an hour, which seems like a lot of money, but in the IT space, it really wasn't. So I was aggressive with my pricing, but learned a lot and was able to build a customer base and had a lot of fun doing that over the years. And like you said, I did that for about 8 years until I lost my passion for it. I wasn't excited about it anymore. And I knew that it was time for me to get out.
So before we switch to the next entrepreneurial adventure, do you remember what it was like? Because I was an entrepreneur at one point. I sold the business. Do you remember the first person you hired as an employee?
Yes.
Because that is always, I feel, for an entrepreneur, like a big deal when you hire your first employee.
Yeah. So I mean, it's fun. It's exciting. You have to have money to pay for that person. So there's a lot of mixed emotions around it. But yeah, it was a little mix of both of that.
Yeah.
But it was an exciting time. But it was also a sign of growth, which was always fun.
So, and I want to ask, because obviously, you and I graduated from college around the same time. Zuckerberg was building Facebook in his dorm when we were in college, right? LinkedIn started, I think, around the early 2000s, but I wasn't on LinkedIn for quite a bit of time after that. Were you, because you're like a social media guru at this point, were you using social media with your first business back, in the 2000s? Like, how are you using social media at that point, or were you not?
No. So social media wasn't a thing. Mailers, stuffers, it was a paper-based product back then.
Old. Yeah, it's interesting. It's crazy how quickly things have changed when you think about how social media has evolved, like everything that we do. So I wanted to ask that question because, like, you're so good at it now. I didn't know if you had done it for quite a bit of time and then just kind of evolved.
I wish I did. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? If we were that smart, we would we'd have even a bigger presence on social media. So you said you lost your passion for the business. So what did you do with the business? Did you sell it? Did you close it? Like, how did that happen?
Yep, sold it off. Yeah, sold it off. So yeah. So it was a success. I mean, that was great. But it just, it's funny when you like today. I spoke at an event last week, and it was an insurance event. But someone was saying, "Wow, you can see how much passion you have for what you do," and I love hearing that because I've been doing this now for a little while, and I do have a lot of passion for it. I love doing what I do every day, and I know that if I start to lose that. And there's a point where it's not coming back, because you could go through phases where you're like, I'm not so passionate today. Yeah. But if you go in that decline and that it's it, and there's no coming back from that, then I think you have to have that realization that you need to change something or get out of it.
Well, I mean, I think especially as an entrepreneur, because it's the business is yours, right? So, and everyone that's working for you is looking to you as that visionary to drive the success of the business and the excitement of the business and to motivate them and inspire them. And if you're not all in, people can tell, right? So I think that's a great point. So let's talk about, how did you end up founding EBM, right? Like, what was EBM what it is today when you started in 2011? Was that your vision from the beginning, or how did that evolve?
Yeah. So oddly enough, no, it was no, it was something. So in the insurance industry, President Obama at the time came out with the Affordable Care Act, which most of us know about today. It's the insurance mandate, which requires you to have insurance or requires your employer to provide you with insurance if you're a large company.
Right.
So President Obama came out with that. It was passed, and the insurance industry was like just chaotic. A lot of insurance firms thought they were going to lose all their money, lose their business. And my father-in-law has had a successful career in the insurance industry. About 40, he's retired now, but he was this time 30 something years in the insurance industry, and I was around it all the time. And knowing that I'm coming from the IT side and understanding technology, my vision was, well, how hard can it be to go in there, because there was a thing called public exchanges. So public
Yep.
exchanges were a way for you to go and get insurance and be funded by the government. So a private exchange was kind of the flip side of that. Insurance brokers can offer private insurance on an exchange, and they can still make money. So I was like, wow, how hard can this be? And it was hard. and insurance is tough, man. Insurance is a difficult thing to be in. And so I applaud the folks that we work with because they do amazing jobs. They have to know a lot. But private exchanges had popped for a very little time when I started EBM, and it failed very quickly. It got a lot of hype and then went away. But I had luckily invested in a technology that allowed me to pivot. So I just flipped to straight up benefits technology. So I was able to sustain it, and I was able to continue to grow the business to what it is today.
So you mentioned one of my favorite words, pivot, because I believe, and I pivoted a number of times in my life, both, with personal projects, with experiences at work. And if I hadn't made that pivot, I don't think I'd be as successful as I was. So go back to that point where you had to make that decision. Was it easy? Was it hard? Were you scared? Like, or was it, or like, walk us through that, because I think a lot of people they come up with an idea, Frank, and they're like, I'm going to do this. And they start a business or they start an initiative. And I'm going to do this. And then when it doesn't work or go the way they think, they're afraid to make that pivot. And if they don't make that pivot, they end up failing. So how did you get the guts to make the pivot and change?
So while we're on this, I'll tell you two things that I would recommend to anyone if they're watching now, if they watch this on a replay. Two things, if you want to be an entrepreneur, that I would say are very important, are being able to pivot and the ability to take risk. Yeah. Those are two things that I've learned. So those, and we can always touch on that after, but while we're on that topic, those two things are extremely important. So yeah, so the pivot was kind of, for me, it was the chance I had to take. I knew that if I stuck with private exchanges, my vision, and because people wrote it out for maybe another 2 years after I took the dip, yeah. Now I'm out of here. I knew that it wasn't going to go anywhere. I had a feeling that this was going to die, and the people that were trying to make it work were people who invested a ton of money, and there was these stakeholders that wanted, they had to see it work, and they were so stuck in that tunnel vision. I wasn't. I was, younger, and I was able to pivot. So it was an easier decision for me to make, and I knew that if I was going to be successful, it's what I had to do.
So no, I think that's great advice, and again, I think the advice of pivoting can really, even if you're not an entrepreneur, even in a corporate setting, I think can really benefit you from a career perspective. So I appreciate you sharing that. So today, right? So EBM, you've been doing it now since 2011. So 9 years later, how big is the business? What is your role there on a day-to-day basis? And my next question is, how does that tie into everything you do online with LinkedIn? And I want to hear how that connects.
So the business is more successful, honestly, than I could have ever dreamed it is. And I'm very—
Congratulations. That's awesome news.
Yes. And I feel very blessed to be where I'm at today. I don't take anything for granted. And I don't think that I owe it all to me either. I know I have a great team of people, 40 something people that work for EBM. So wow. Very, very thankful for them. And yes, so very successful business, and it's a great place to be at. So love it. It's doing very well. So, I mean, the social media aspect of it and how I got into social media, is just something that happened outside of, me running a company, because I am involved very heavily in the day-to-day operations of the company, but it's how I want to be. We have people that do certain things, which I feel any business is going to be successful. You got to have people who are accountable, responsible, and know their roles and know how to get them done. And I'm very grateful for the people that I have on my team. So, yeah, I mean, I'm involved. I love what I love to do. It's funny. I'm involved in a lot of the small, not smaller things, but the interactions with our broker partners that we work with. And some of them are like, should we be working with someone else on your team? And I'm like, no, because this is what I love to do. Like, it makes me excited. So I am involved. I interact with a lot of our partners to help them win business. What we do is help insurance brokers and consultants win business and keep that business. And I love to win. I am very competitive, and so
you don't
the people we work with. What's that?
You're competitive. I'm shocked by that.
Yeah. Hey, if you're in first, you're last, baby.
So you're not the marketing department of the business. I'm assuming you have people that help with marketing, help with sales.
Yep.
Explain to me how you went from, and I connected with you. I think we connected on the phone. Like it's got to be, I want to say it was 2018 when we connected a while ago, and you didn't have, I think, I don't know, 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, right? So when did you join? Let's hear the LinkedIn story. Like, when did you join? Why did you join? And what was your intent when you got on the platform?
I joined LinkedIn around 2010 because that's about the time like I was getting out of the IT business, getting into the insurance business. So I was kind of like, I don't know, am I going to get a job somewhere? Or, what am I doing? So I kind of went to LinkedIn to see what was out there.
Yeah.
So I've been on LinkedIn since about 2010 I joined. So been on here for a while.
And but you weren't creating content when you for years, right?
Yeah, no. I think the only person who's been creating content that long is Brian Schulman. Shout out to him. Yeah, I mean, so how I started creating content, I guess we'll get right into that. Because yes, when you and I met, 2018, I kind of started getting active on the platform. Maybe I was sharing some articles. Maybe chiming in on people's posts.
I think that's how a lot of people start.
Yeah, and that's fun. Nothing wrong. That's great. You dip your feet in, see how things go. Interact, learn a little bit, and that's me. I was kind of like lurking. And May of 2018, I met someone some of you may know, Gary Vaynerchuk, and him and I sat down. We had an awesome conversation, and he told me a lot of great things. But one of the things he said to me was, "You need to start making video on LinkedIn." I remember I could see him sitting there telling me, he's like, "Start making video on LinkedIn." He's like, "You do that, and it's going to not only change your life professionally, but also personally." And I was just like, kind of skeptical, because I was like, who wants to see me? But that kind of changed my perspective on LinkedIn. And actually, I didn't create my first video till November of that year. So I really didn't imagine getting advice from Gary Vee and saying, yeah, okay, I'm going to tuck that in.
So can we pause there for a second? Because I think a lot of people that are either watching this live or are going to watch this on YouTube or listen to it on the podcast are asking themselves right now, how did you get a meeting with Gary Vee? Because so many people love Gary Vee. So how did that happen, if you don't mind me asking?
So Gary Vee, now back then, I'm not sure exactly, but now it's called 4Ds. And it's a thing where you can pay, it's probably a lot of money to pay to sit down and meet with Gary Vee. So that's what it was. It was a kind of a meeting that he had with a bunch of entrepreneurs. Now it's called 4Ds, but you can pay. Back then you could pay. I actually was lucky enough to get a spot on not paying. And yeah, I got to sit with him and meet some of his team, and it was pretty amazing.
So he tells you in May to make video on LinkedIn, and you don't do it till November.
Yeah, literally. I walked out of there all fired up. I'm like, yeah, this is great. Had a bunch of stuff, notes. I recorded stuff on my phone, just all this stuff. I had, so many notes, and I was thinking more from a business mind of the stuff that I can kind of do in the business, and kind of put the whole video content creation thing kind of in the back burner.
So did you have a personal brand online before
No,
you started this? You did
so
nothing.
I mean, yeah, I mean, in all reality, because I think it's important for anyone who might see this at any point in time, who says, "Oh, I'm not going to create content." I was the same way, because people see me now and they're like, "Dude, you're crushing on LinkedIn. You do all this, you make videos and whatever." Yeah, that's me now. And in all honesty, what took me that gap there to create content was because I thought no one was going to listen to me. I thought I had nothing to talk about, and I was just petrified of haters. People are going to say that you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about, you're ugly, trolling, all this stuff that was mentally slowing me down in my head, but was just stupid things that I had to get over. And it took me that time to get over. And one day I just literally just whipped out my phone and said, all right, I'm going to create a piece of content. And I did. And then I've been, slowly building over time. I mean, back then it was in November, 2018, I had 500 connections on LinkedIn, and then I started creating a piece of content a week, and now I do 6 pieces a week.
So it's interesting. I think a couple of things you said resonate with a lot of people. I think a lot of people think to themselves, I'm not interesting. No one wants to hear me talk. And it's funny because I completely disagree with that when people say that. And that's why do I think I interview people every Sunday night to hear their career stories? Because everyone's story is so unique, it can help someone else. And that's the beauty of LinkedIn, is it's this giant community of people helping each other, right? So your career stories can hopefully inspire and motivate others to help with their careers. So it's always interesting to hear people say that, because I'll tell people that we're going to interview them for 40 to 50 minutes. And they're like, no one wants to hear me talk for that long, Nick. I'm like, trust me, it's going to go that long and people are going to, right? So I think that's interesting. And then the other thing that really I find interesting is you are a successful, competitive human, yet you still had that mental mind game where you were like, should I really do this? And there's going to be people that are going to be negative, right? And that still prevented you, even someone as successful and confident as you, from stopping yourself. So think about all the people out there that aren't as successful as you and aren't as confident as you, that are having that same conversation with themselves.
Yeah, and it's true. It was I had my own block going on in my head. I was playing offense and defense in my own brain.
I'm sure so many people do that, Frank. And I guess my question for you then is, what finally got you to say, you know what, like, screw it, I'm just going to make a video? Like, what was that thing that finally pushed you to do it?
Well, I'll tell you, I remember exactly the day I picked up my phone and made my first video. I made a promise to myself, and I said, I'm going to make this video. I'm going to post it. Don't care how it comes out. I'm going to post it, and I'm not going to be concerned with the views, the likes, the comments, any of that stuff. Whatever happens is going to happen. And I still, even though now I post and I get a lot of engagement, I'm very thankful for the connections that I have on LinkedIn. It's been very good to me. But I'm not posting stuff out there because I'm not a view counter, because I want to, oh God, I hope this goes viral. I love, nothing is more important to me than someone hitting me up with a message or dropping a comment and saying, hey man, you made my day. I needed this. I needed to see this. And that's why I continue to create content. That's what inspires me.
So what was, because I was just on a podcast that's going to be coming out, and we were talking about personal branding, and the person who interviewed me said, so what was your why? Like, why did you start posting content? Like, what was the driver for you? Like, was it, I know Gary obviously told you to do it, right? But what ultimately was it? Did you think it was going to help your business? Did you think it was going to help you professionally? Like, what was that why that you started?
Yeah, I honestly didn't, there wasn't the motive of, wow, this is going to make me successful in my business. I had no idea that creating content, if I knew, I'm glad that I had no idea back when I put my first video out that, fast forward to today, the things that have happened because I've created content would have happened, because I don't think it would have happened. I think I would have had a weird mindset where I would have been like greedy and kind of like, oh, I would have wanted the vanity metrics. I went into it not caring about the vanity metrics, and amazing things happened. So I'm very glad that I went about it that way, because literally my why of why I did it, because I wanted to share. I loved, and I was when I started sharing content, it was very insurance specific. I was kind of talking to my peers and sharing things. So it was really just, hey man, I wanted to build a community. And I was more focused narrow on the insurance space, but I was trying to build my tribe.
Yeah. And I love how it's evolved, right? Because you went from doing mostly, your industry type content to name, you have a variety of things now. You do, right? A lot of, all sorts of different videos. I mean, we could talk for an hour just about the different content you make. So I want to bring another point you made though, because you said originally you were posting once a week, and I think your evolution is like a lot of people, right? It's like you try it, you use just your phone, right? You post once a week, and you're like, okay, this is cool, right? And then you realize, well, maybe I should do something else, right? And then you start like, I've seen your video about how you make the content with the better camera, right? And like you got the nicer camera, you got the light, you got the microphone, right? And now you do it 6 days a week. So how important is it that you're posting consistently? I always want to ask that question, because I think a lot of people don't realize how important that is.
Consistency is super important. If you're going to do something, you're not going to know. And I was posting for months before, and I wasn't tracking anything, and I was just putting content out there, engaging with people, meeting people, being really happy that I was like, got to meet so many amazing people and just sharing. So I think over time, the consistency of it was me. Again, I'm a kind of person that I want to see stuff to the end. I mean, I do stuff, and I really do. I go all in. I try to master everything. So, and that's a good thing and a bad thing about me, but I won't get into that right now. But I was very consistent. I wanted to continue to do it. Had no motive for it. Truly wasn't trying to have any gain out of it. And even now when people ask me, like, what's your, what are you trying to do? What's the end goal for this? And I'm like, there's no goal. I mean, this is it. Every day I show up and I get to meet amazing people. And we have this networking in front of us that it might not be here forever. So I'm enjoying it while I have the time. And it's done great things for me. Gary was right. Business, professionally, could not have ever dreamed that LinkedIn would do for me what it has. And I'm so grateful. But again, if LinkedIn went away tomorrow, I'll still be here and my business will still run.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And I think when you look at the why for a lot of people, I think you have a really great point, right? You didn't go into it obsessing over the likes and the comments, right? Or the views. You went into it more with that growth mindset of, hey, I want to learn, build a community, and help my fellow industry peers, which is really cool. So let's talk about a couple of the things I want to talk about with LinkedIn. Then I want to go. We'll close with. We'll do some rapid fire, quick questions, and then we'll close out with the last question. So just to kind of wrap up the LinkedIn piece, when people ask you like, how do I get started creating content, right? And whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, whatever it is, what's your one piece of advice for people that want to get started with creating content? Because you brought up so many great points. I think so many people can relate to how you originally felt. What's your one piece of advice for creating content for people?
The one piece of advice is just to start. That's literally that easy, because I have an Instagram channel. I don't have a huge following, 1,000 followers. I started a YouTube, I've been pretty successful there with some views and some subscribers, but again, 1,000 subscribers or so. So just because I'm doing well on LinkedIn doesn't mean I'm going to do well on other platforms. So I had to pick my audience. I had to pick where I wanted to go all in and dedicate. And I did that. And that was LinkedIn, but I also didn't know anything. I just started. I one day picked up this phone and created a video, and over time I've evolved. And that's the thing. It's like you don't know what you're good at and what stories you want to tell and all these types of things until you start. If you don't start, you're never going to know. So I think the first thing to do is actually start.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. And we'll, just for everyone listening and watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast, we will link to Frank's LinkedIn page, his profile in the show notes. And then we'll also link to Frank's business page for EBM as well, so you can learn about his benefits technology company as well. And I think Frank, you have a great video where you actually show people like, hey, here's how I make my content. Here's the technology I use to record it. Here's the technology I use to edit it. Here's the technology I use to caption it, and everything. So I think that will people can find that right on your LinkedIn page, which would be awesome. All right, so we'll do a couple rapid fire questions, and we'll get you out of here because I know you've got probably other things to do with either your family or the business. So for first rapid fire, biggest success in your career?
My biggest success is my career is being able to make enough money to spend time with my family.
Well said. Love it. And I love it. I don't know. You've done a couple videos, I think, with your daughter.
Yes.
Which which is like the cutest thing ever. I have not done that. And it's funny, I haven't had one of them run in yet while I'm doing a live show. I'm waiting for that to happen one time. I do after they go to bed, but one day they're going to wake up and run in here. Biggest failure in your career to this point?
My biggest failure was actually a business I started that we didn't talk about. We obviously don't have time today, but I started a company where all my revenue was coming from one client, and that client took all my ideas, everything that I put together for them, and basically stole it and fired me. And that was so not protecting what's inside your brain and your IP is extremely important. So that was a big lesson for me.
No, I can imagine. Wow, that I'm sorry to hear that. How about your most favorite class in college, going way back?
My favorite class in college, oddly enough, was an art class that I took, but it was more not drawing. It was more of the learning about art. And I remember I had to tell a story. It's so funny. I know this is why I like it, because it was a story of John Biglin and the Single Skull. I think it was John Biglin or Jim Biglin. I'm messing it up, but it was a story of, it's a still image of a guy that you had to kind of describe what was going on in his brain. And that was one of the most favorite things I ever did, was pick apart this photo and describe what was going on in this, which no one knows what was going on in his brain. But I thought I did.
I absolutely love how vivid your memories are and your storytelling ability. It's fantastic. All right. So next question. Most important mentor in your life?
Oh man, it's a tough one, because I always considered myself not really having a mentor. I always longed for one. And I never really had someone who helped me kind of truly influence you. I would say that if I had to pick someone who's given me the best advice and kind of helped me on my path, I would definitely give that to my father-in-law. He's been a good I guess mentor for me in that aspect with business.
So shout out to Frank's father-in-law. All right. So last rapid fire question. What is the real reason that you like to do volunteer and philanthropy work? Because I know that's a big part of who you are. I know we didn't get to talk a lot about it today, but why so much volunteer and philanthropy work?
Well, one of the things that I'm really involved in is cystic fibrosis. And I got involved because I went to an event that I had no idea what cystic fibrosis was, and I felt really ignorant that there was this massive thing going on that I had no idea about. And also because I felt very selfish. I think a lot of us in life, we do things for us. It's like always me. We're doing things to benefit us. We're doing this. However, it's financially, material things, whatever it is. But we think about us. We put ourselves first a lot, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you are in a position where it's okay to look outside and not always be internal, I realized that I wasn't doing anything for anyone else. And that was for me, and I'm involved in other things aside from cystic fibrosis. I came from very humble beginnings, and I love helping out in that area, but it's just knowing that I'm doing something for someone besides me.
And I think, you might not look at it this way, but all the videos you put and all the advice you put on LinkedIn, you are absolutely giving back to the community. So it's not like a traditional nonprofit, but you're making an impact, Frank. So, all right. So one more rapid fire, then we'll go to our closer question, because this is like a signature Frankie baby thing. Favorite t-shirt you wear in your videos?
Well, I'll tell you, because I wear it often. And a shout out to Keenan. If you're not following Keenan, he's a great dude on social media. I learned a lot from him. I actually interviewed him on my 5 Questions with Frank show. It hasn't released yet, but it says "Bet on yourself." And I found that shirt through Keenan, and I wear it very often because I bet on myself every day. And I think we all need to bet on ourselves.
Yeah, I was actually telling my wife before this, I was like, this guy Frank has way cooler t-shirts than me and way cooler hair. Like I made both of those points to her. So, all right. So last question. And again, I really thank you so much for making time, Frank. This was a lot of fun. We heard a lot of really interesting stories about your career path, but I always close with this to all my guests. If you could give people one piece of advice to help them reach their full potential. So one thing that's helped you be so successful in your career, what would that be?
Well, I'll tell you, and I hope this answers your question, but I would say I've learned to not compare my version of success to anyone else's. So what makes you successful is really kind of what's in here, and what you're striving for. Don't look externally and say, well, they're successful, or how do they do this, how do they do that, because you'll never get there. You don't know if that person's even happy with the success that they're out there. So I would say don't not follow your passion, but do what it is inside where you feel successful. You're going to get to a point where you're like, this is it. And it's not money. It's you look around and you take away all the material things, no matter what it is, cars, boats, whatever you have, strip all of it away or imagine it all gone and see what's left. And what's left, if that really makes you happy, you find success. And usually those are people. And for me, it's people. So I would say you can take all the material away from me, and I would still be very, very happy, Frankie, baby.
That is well said. I think it's very insightful. And I think that's something that, you and I, again, we're around the same age. I think a lot of younger entrepreneurs and younger people out of school could really listen to that advice, because I think a lot of people think all about the material things when they're right out of school, right? They just want money, and it's so much more than that. So, all right. So again, thank you so much. It's getebm.com is your website for your benefits technology company. We'll put that in the show notes. And then you can follow Frank on LinkedIn. We'll put your profile link in there as well. Frankie Baby is the hashtag. If you just search for Frankie Baby, which I love the hashtag, you'll find Frank. So Frank, again, thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep inspiring. Keep motivating, and keep being a great entrepreneur. We appreciate you making time.
You bet. You keep listening. I'll keep making them, man. I promise you.
Thanks, Frank. Have a great night.
All righty.